If you took on all the responsibility you could take on, and you faced everything that you needed to face, what would you be like? Who would you be? And how would the world transform around you? And well, if the partial answer is, well, if I do that a little bit, things get a fair bit better, then the next question might be, well, what if you did that completely? And I don't think that's possible in some sense, right? It's like, perfection is a horizon that always recedes, but it isn't obvious to me what the upper limit of that is.
Great literature tells you the great story of good and evil, always. It's good and evil against a background of chaos and order, always. And the evil characters are there to be bad examples, and the good characters are there to be good examples, or you see the interplay of those forces within a single person. And it's a reminder of who you could be. If you don't know who you could be, your conscience will remind you when you deviate, and then you can start to attend to that. Think, well, look, I'm actually ashamed when I do this. I should stop. Unless I want to be ashamed all the time, it looks like I should stop. And then maybe you stop doing that, and then your conscience objects to something else, and maybe you stop doing that. And as that happens, you start to develop a vision of who you could be. You're someone in an out-of-the-way place at a particular time and place. And for you, what that means is that make contact with the highest of values. You have to bring that down to your particulars and figure out how you do that. It's going to be a way that no one else does it, because you're the only one that's you. But you can aim at something, and the point of the chapter is that you aim at something, and that will shape you as you move towards it. And then your aim will change, you'll move, but that doesn't matter. It gets you going.
Who are you? Or at least, who could you be? Answer. Part of the eternal force that constantly confronts the terrible unknown, voluntarily. Part of the eternal force that transcends naivety and becomes dangerous enough in a controlled manner to understand evil and beard it in its lair. And part of the eternal force that faces chaos and turns it into productive order, or that takes order that has become too restrictive, reduces it to chaos, and renders it productive once again. And all of this, being very difficult to understand consciously, but vital to our survival, is transmitted in the form of the stories that we cannot help but attend to. And it is in this manner that we come to apprehend what is of value, what we should aim at, and what we could be.
Well, to begin with, and this happened when I was in graduate school, I had a lot of bad habits. I smoked like a pack of cigarettes a day, and I drank a lot. I came from this little town in northern Alberta, and like many little towns, especially in northern Canada, the alcohol overuse is de rigueur, and so I noticed when I was in my early 20s that the only time I really regretted what I had done was when I was drinking. Now, it was also interfering with me writing, because I couldn't concentrate well enough if I was hungover, but I also couldn't tolerate the emotional strain of what I was writing about when I was hungover. It was I couldn't handle being on the edge because I destabilized my nervous system. In any case, I stopped drinking, and the reason for that was, I decided I didn't want to be ashamed of what I was doing anymore. I thought, maybe I could not do things that were shameful and then see what my life was like. So that was sort of on the negative end, the constraint end. I think people get, on the more positive end, people get deeply involved in what they're doing if they're in the right place in the right time. So that I would say you can tell, this is the idea of heaven on earth to some degree. When time stops, when you're not aware of the duration of time, when you're so engaged with what you're doing, then you've got the forces of chaos and order balanced properly. You're not stultified and bored. That's an excess of order. Everything's too predictable. You're not overwhelmed. You're dealing with, you're playing tennis at the peak of your game. That's partly what people experience when they're great athletes, when they play.
The zone, yeah.
And they're always stretching themselves to their limit. You can tell that if you watch a gymnast, for example, who has a brilliant performance. They've stretched themselves beyond their domain of competence during the performance. And that's what makes everybody leap to their feet. That's the incarnation given embodiment right there in front of you for some moments, and everyone cheers that on.
If you're adopting a time frame that makes what you're doing appear trivial, the problem isn't necessarily what you're doing, although it might be, and you have to ask yourself that question because perhaps you are engaging in something that's more trivial than you should be. The problem is that your mind, which is capable of leaping across evaluative frameworks, has picked a time frame inappropriate for the task. So quit doing that. Instead, you could say, well, why don't you practice adopting the time frame that imbues your properly oriented action with the deepest possible apprehended meaning? And why would you not think that the fact that that meaning manifests itself with the proper choice of time frame, why wouldn't you accept the fact that's indication of a valid choice? It certainly feels like it. You know what it's like. You get engaged in something, a deep conversation, a piece of music, a piece of art, something you love doing, someone you love being with. You get engaged in that, you lose your sense of temporality. And you don't pop out of it and think, oh my God, I wish I would have used a time frame that made everything irrelevant because of my, cognitive brilliance. You think, hey, we could do that some more. Like, how about all the time? And that's a good goal. It's like, yeah, how about that all the time? And then you've got time right when you're engaged like that. And I would say that's a profound neurophysiological signal that you're in the right place at the right time, right? Because it's accompanied by a sense of deep well-being, and that's literally an antidote to suffering.
The advantage to being deprived is that it's obvious what to do. Like if you're starving, then you eat. There's no question. But if you have enough to eat, and you have enough shelter, and you have enough information, maybe not as much as you could have, but enough, it starts to become difficult to decide what to do. And then you have another problem, which is that you can't decide what to do. And then you have to start to investigate value. So you should be responsible to yourself and your future self, the community of selves that you are across time. And then you should be responsible for and productive for as many people as you can manage. And so that might be first your intimate partner, your wife, second your parents, your siblings, your children, maybe your children primarily, although there's a trade-off there with your wife. Then your local community, then your broader community. You want to take on all that responsibility if you can, in a sense that's both productive and generous. That gives you something to do, justify your miserable life to yourself and everyone else, and you need to do that. It orients you solidly in the world if you do that, and it gives you a dragon to fight, a real one, and that's where the gold is. So